welcome Craig and Julian from Paris today. As I mentioned, Craig's first book, Pancakes in Paris, was such a hit with us here in the bookshop. When I found out that there was a second one, Let Them Eat Pancakes, and please give us that title in French when we come to it. Oh, yes, and there's someone with both copies. I thought, oh, how fantastic, a second helping of all the wonderful, poignant, stressful, and hilarious and exhilarating adventures that we enjoyed in the first book. So here's more with the second book. So I reached out to Craig all the way in Paris. Through all this technology, we get to be together. So I just want to welcome everyone this afternoon or this evening or this morning, depending on where exactly you're calling in from. We may have some folks from the West Coast. So we're really international today, and we're very happy for that. I'm here at the bookshop at 290 Main Street. We are open for browsing. You must wear a mask, comme ça. And we're still offering curbside pickup. And we are also connected with bookshop.org. We have a virtual ordering online service. So get your book at 290 Main Street or via bookshop.org. So thanks. And
vouchers arrive in time, or?
Pardon?
Do the book plates and vouchers arrive in time, or not quite yet?
There's nothing like arriving in time anymore here. Nothing arrives in time. For example, I ordered Christmas stamps November 15. I'm still waiting.
Oh, okay.
I'm sure they'll be here.
I just wanted to mention, you do get a book. When they arrive, there's a free pancake voucher. Good for Paris. You have to come to Paris, but it's a great excuse to get you to Paris to come get your free pancakes at our restaurant. And the last book that worked really well, we had people from all over the country come over and had their voucher ready to go. And we got to meet them, and again, because we had met them at the events. And so it's a wonderful way to just to dream of being able to travel again. Yeah. So there's that side.
Thank you for that. Yeah, we absolutely need that to hold out that dream of being able to travel. And listen, I have to say, first of all, it's wonderful to have Julian and Craig with us today. And it's wonderful to end this year, which has been a really difficult year, on a note of humor. And I think when the going gets tough, we all have to, reach down and find as much humor as we can in the absurdity of life every day. And that's exactly what Craig has done with both of his books, in particular, Let Them Eat Pancakes, which we're celebrating today. Many of you may know a little bit about Craig's background, but before he became totally subsumed in the restaurant business, he was actually a film producer and a screenwriter. And I think one of the funniest things that I read is that you won awards at the Lucille Ball Festival of Comedy. That is really wonderful.
You don't know about that? Up in upstate New York?
Maybe later on we will hear about that. But the new book it's delightful. Pathos, humor, and just a lot of interesting information about what you will need when you open your own restaurant in Paris. Take notes, Baron, and anyone else who's considering that. We find out a little bit about how difficult it might be to get the exotic ingredients like bacon or bagels. What, comme ça, what is a bagel anyway? So lots of wonderful things, hunting for, is it truffles? No, it's snails. Yes, with his mother-in-law. Okay, great.
Can you poke your head real quick? Can you poke your head in real quick? Elle est là.
Ah, welcome, welcome. Wonderful. So I just want to say that I've dropped in the chat already for those who want to get the book on bookshop.org, the direct link to do that. But meanwhile, I just want to have us all give a very, very warm American welcome to Zoom welcome to Craig and Julian.
Oh, thank you.
Bienvenue, bienvenue.
We'd be hugging each other now.
Take it away.
No touching. So we turn it to you all.
Ah, to us? Okay.
Yes, please.
We were going to do an interview format or what?
Well, why don't you maybe just drop us in the middle of craziness of there's so many wonderful stories, and if you want to just set it up a little bit, and then we can have conversation,
Yeah.
and I'll tease out a few of my favorite passages for you to tell us more about.
Yeah. So, as you know, the first book is more like the origin story of how this restaurant started. It's called Breakfast in America, and how I had this epiphany that I loved croissants and pain au chocolat. I was living in France working on a TV show, and I loved all those things. But after a while, for several months, if you talk to an expat over in France, they'll say the same thing. You know, croissant every day, it's great, but after a while, you want something more. And so I felt, oh wait, there's a niche here. There's a missing market of breakfast. And I was kind of through with a bit Hollywood for a little while. I really wanted to live in Paris, and so I had this epiphany and decided to open up this diner, even though I'd had no real restaurant experience, never had my own business. Here I was going to do it in a foreign country, so that was sort of the origin in the first book. And this one, I really wanted to. So a lot of it came about from events like at Canio's, where I met so many different readers who asked me so many more questions and wanted to find out much more about life here and so that led me to start approaching the second book. And as I wrote more and more of it, I felt I could go deeper into some of these themes, deeper into the transformative nature of living abroad and what Paris did for my own life. So it got a little bit more personal in this book, I think. And it showed a little bit more for example, there's a bit about my dad, his nickname was Fast Eddie. And he appears in the first book a little bit, but in this one, he sort of took a life of his own, and he sort of became the juxtaposition of where my life might have ended up if I stayed where I was and hadn't gotten out of the country, hadn't gotten a college degree, which is all due to French, which is my personal journey. And how, as a working class guy, all these things that we take for granted in France, you know, he would have loved to have job security and full healthcare and vacations and so many things. And so that became a part of the book as well, that I felt gave a little bit of an arc, gave a little bit of a contrast to my own experiences here and what Paris was able to offer to me. And then for the title itself, it's just funny, and Julian can attest to this. The French are very strict about many things, you know, like ça se fait pas. These are things you do then and now. And so, for example, you know, there's set meal times. You eat at this hour and this hour. You know, you can have this aperitif at a certain time, but that's it. You can't snack all day. You just can't grab a meal at any time. And so, similarly, it was a big challenge to convince my French customers that they could have breakfast at any time. And so there's just one scene in the book where this French customer, it's 10 at night, and I remember very well, it was the first year or two we were open. And he sort of said, you know, is it okay to have pancakes at 10 o'clock at night? I was like, why wouldn't you be able to have pancakes? He goes, because pancakes are for breakfast and now it's dinner. And I was like, well, no, you can have them anytime you want. And just the light in his eyes that I can eat this anytime I want. So this idea of the let them eat pancakes, I just thought it was a wonderful play on words of the famous line. And in French, it's a little different. What is the line in French, Julien?
Qu'il mange de la brioche.
Qu'il mange de la brioche. So it is cake, it's brioche. That's what she actually said. Well, some historians say she didn't actually say those words, but they have lived on legend, of course, and Marie Antoinette's famous line. Mm-hmm. And I think one last point too, and you brought up the escargot, the snails hunting scene with my mother-in-law. What I really wanted to do with this book too, and when you're over here in France, you get involved with the expatriate community, and there's many memoirs about France and about the personal experiences here, but I wanted to go into areas that I haven't read about, that I wanted to see something new. And so a lot of the expats who've been living here 30, 40 years said to me, you know, I had no idea there was a snail hunting season in France, for example. So I ended up doing a lot of research in this book as well for example, the opening chapter is called The Cobblestone. And when I took over the cafe in the 5th arrondissement, the Latin Quarter, the location was owned by this elderly couple who wanted to retire. And at the end of the signing, when I took over the place, they had been working there for 35 years. Monsieur Morin, the owner, gave me this cobblestone, and turns out it was from the 1968 student riots, or the protests that transformed France completely. And he had one of them go through his window and land in the cafe, and he saved it all these years as a memento to this, what they call the révolution. And so in France, they count about 7 different révolutions. Anytime there's some big transformation, it's another revolution. So May of 68 is considered a révolution. So I had to do a lot of research into that and see, like, here my restaurant was right in the middle where all this historic action happened. And I had a direct link with the owner of the restaurant to that time, and I still have this cobblestone. And so what this diner allowed me to do is, and this is a perfect example of just take some event that happened like that and just go deeper into it and discover something underneath and just take away the layers of it. And lastly, I said lastly, but I'll say one more lastly. I think some of my favorite chapters is one like Madame Hubert eats a burger. And what I love about this is, again, the sort of best of both worlds idea theme that comes out of here. I think certainly, I think both of our countries can learn from each other, and there's this idea that our lives are richer. Julian and I being an example, my French husband, and maybe you can ask him a little bit about that, what it's like to exchange our cultures. And so Madame is this wonderful woman. I'm so happy to say she's still alive. I saw her yesterday. She's 80 something, 87 or 88 years old. And one day I ran into her in our apartment building, and she's, by the way, what do you do? And in France, when someone asks you that, it means you're getting close to each other, because usually they don't ask you what you do. So this is an example of a cultural difference where, do you agree? You know people for years, and I'll ask you, what do they do? And it's like, you don't ask that, it's just, you want to know the person, it's not about their careers per se. And so I told her this American restaurant, and she's like, oh, what do you serve there? Hamburgers? I said, well, yes, of course, but we have so much more, which was one of the reasons I wanted to do my diner. I wanted to get away from that cliche that all we do is burgers and McDonald's, and we have all these breakfasts and you have to come. And she said, all right, I will come. And so Madame came to the restaurant, and just, that was one of the wonderful moments for me. She, here she was, she had survived World War II. She was in Normandy during the whole D-Day. The soldiers came right through her village, which had been destroyed. She went on to become a very influential college professor, an intellectual, just everything I love about these French women. And she's, let's do a burger too, something on her list of all the things she's done. And so it was just wonderful to get that kind of connection. And she came and she just went right into it. She's just like, I want a burger, I want everything, and that gusto in life. And I think that exchange for me was just one of these examples of what makes it so rewarding to have a business here and have that connection with your community and the people around you and around food, which is part of our theme today. So, so that's the general thing about my book.
That's so wonderful, Craig. And, it makes me think, as I was reading through, that you're in a way a kind of a cultural ambassador, and I'm thinking of some of the other characters, American characters, people you've met and you've turned them into characters in the book. I wanted to say, as someone who offers writing workshops, and we have some writers on the call, the writing in this book is so enjoyable. The characters are so interestingly fleshed out. There's humor, there's suspense, there's tension. It's just a great read, which is one of, is like our first qualification for any book in the door at Canio's. But it's so interesting and moving in many, many ways. But I'm thinking of the way that you also were able to help us feeble Americans come to appreciate, ways of eating that we're unfamiliar with. There was Carol and her daughter in your restaurant who, insisted on the plain burgers. There were the children of a friend, Dee Dee. You wanted to take them out to dinner, and they wanted to go somewhere fun, a fun restaurant for kids in Paris. And you did such a beautiful job of, reminding yourself of one of your mantras: don't be a snob, Craig, don't be a snob.
France can turn you into a snob.
Yeah, but really beautifully making that cultural exchange. So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that aspect of dealing with Americans there,
Yeah.
and then certainly we'll welcome Julian into the conversation, and more to come. So I have some other questions, but just about that part, just Americans that you've encountered that you might want to mention.
Yeah, I think that was like I said before, when I opened the diner, one of my main goals was to show French people that there was something beyond fast food, right? Because that was the cliche. So generationally, younger French people were much more open to trying it, and others, it took a little more coaxing. But on the other side, when you say the snob side, there's many expat Americans over here who just won't go to an American restaurant. Oh, why would I go there? Where other Americans have been here, it's like, oh, finally someone opened a pancake place, And so I think so I knew I was going to get it from all angles. I was going to get it from certain French people, like, oh, you guys don't do real food. Americans saying, I'm in France, why would I want to go to an American place? But come on, a diner, don't you have some of your fondest memories late night, at 2 a.m. with your friends and having your coffee and your pancakes and having great conversations, and something about a diner encourages that and fosters that. And so when you said that, I think, what was the word? An ambassador, but you said
ambassador. Mm-hmm.
In fact, when the restaurant first opened in 2003, it was January, and in March, Iraq happened, and so there were war in Iraq, and there were protests constantly back and forth. And we had Americans who were living who had come through or were living over there who had become, I don't know if you remember back at that time, it was so hard to criticize it and talk about it. And so they would come in and talk and feel like they had a safe place to talk about it and exchange with French people about it, where French people could ask them direct questions, what's going on. And so one magazine wrote us and said we were at a cultural crossroads between countries. And so that was one of my favorite comments, because that's what I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be where you could get there and get into heated debates. It doesn't get personal in France. It's about the politics or about the thing, and it doesn't, you don't end up like taking each other personally. And so that's very refreshing. And so certainly when as an American, how France transformed me is this idea of taking your time when you like to eat, and exploring all different things. And so in France, I love French food and loving exploring it. And so as a businessman, I want my business to work. But when Carol came in with her daughter and said they started coming in every day, 3 times a day, sure, it was great for business. That's the American side of me. But the French side of me was like, go out and eat something else. You're in the restaurant capital of the world, and I couldn't get her to do that. Whereas I could get my high school friend to finally give up on this fun restaurant. I was like, you can go to Disneyland or you can whatever, Paris, but and we'll cut to Julian after this. That's where he gave one of my favorite speeches in the entire book. And just said to them, wait, and we'll have them talk about that. And then the parents say, oh, the kids won't like escargot. They'll never like snails. And you saw what, I won't ruin it for you, but there was quite a surprise at the dinner table just by being a little daring and trying something new. But your speech in that chapter, when you were telling them about a fun restaurant, when they wanted to go someplace fun, like a Chuck E. Cheese or something.
Gosh, what did I say?
You said it was a time to.
Oh yeah, that's right, exactly. Yeah. Well, when you eat in France, it's a time to gather, all together, to slow down and share together the food, but also the time that you spend together to, talk and exchange thoughts and all that. So you want to actually have an experience out of being together at the table. So it's more about that than just being, let's go somewhere fun. I said, what is that? I don't think we have that in France.
But you also said that it was an opportunity to educate
Right.
children. It was a time to that food is sacred, in France, and so it's an opportunity to learn to respect your food, and right. I mean, all those things you said.
Well, I have to say something here.
I might read it.
It was very beautiful. It was really, really speaking about that sacred transaction, and that ritual that takes place around the table, that unfortunately we've gotten too far away from in many cases.
About colors, flavors, and all that, and all that becomes a library in your brain. And this is how you actually came to enjoy life to the fullest, because you have all those memories, all those experiences. Yeah, you can. Yet
You want to read it yourself, or do you want me to read it?
you read it yourself.
So at this point, Julian couldn't stop himself. I am sorry, but I have to say something. Here in France, we do not play with food. We respect it. Gathering with your family at the dinner table is an opportunity to teach your child manners, how to sit up straight, eat properly with a knife and fork, not a fork and a finger. Partake in engaging conversation. It's how we evaluate a child's education, a way to show that you are a master of yourself and not some animal running around wild.
What you say here? Do you know the expression "when in Rome"?
Yeah.
Right.
Wait.
When in
Right.
Rome, when I go to the States, I don't do all that. I just go the American way. So I eat whatever you guys eat, whatever time you want to eat, no problem. Your country, your manners, I follow it. Now, this one is here in France now. So when in Rome, then you follow us. So I've been spending a lot of time those couple of years to exchange my French experience with him, so he can actually understand how we do enjoy food, and that comes in a different way for sure.
Yeah.
But it took a little time. Like me, it took me a little time to finally understand that pancakes could be enjoyable with maple syrup instead of cheese, instead of guacamole, all smoked salmon, for example.
Yeah, and there's a chapter in there about Thanksgiving, I think, that also shows the different cultures. And I think it's no coincidence that Thanksgiving's my favorite holiday, because it's the opportunity to sit around the table. So I guess I had that in my blood, to have that sit down meal with the courses and that that it was all just about that. And I just remember, because I remember as a kid, just sitting down at a table for dinner was just very rare. It was like on those rare occasions, everyone was on the run. So that's so I think
So I have something to that. I'm French.
Please.
When you probably don't know that yet, but I'm going to say that now. When I say to French people, friends or family, I married an American, the first reaction I get is, a slight face. So I say right away, don't you worry. He knows how to be at a table. He knows good wine and good food. And okay.
That's the main concern, right? That is number one requirement.
Talk about
That's wonderful.
I never told that to you because it's not. You're good to go now.
Well, that's a lovely aspect of the book. I forgot the name of the chapter, but the coming together of Julian and Craig is really so beautiful. Loving in France. There are, as I mentioned, exquisite highs and some really challenging challenges in the form of these extremely complicated French labor laws. There are many experiences of that, Craig, that you're having to deal with. I don't know if you want to, just speak about one or two really brief examples of how you've had to sort of navigate around some of these issues, and when in France, come up to speed about what is it called, the Code de Travail, the rule. The 3,000-page, rule book that keeps changing almost every day.
Yeah.
But
exactly. So just to do two quick examples. I think that was the biggest learning curve I took as a businessman in France, because as an entrepreneur, because I didn't know all this. And so the very first employee I hired, I didn't realize about this. You have a contract that's defined for a couple months, or you have indefinite, where you're pretty much locked in for your job forever. And so there's this trial period. And so my first employee, he got past the 2-month trial period, behaved wonderfully and all that. And so I heard, okay, then now you give him a permanent contract. And then his behavior changed, and he just started coming in late and disheveled and I gave him a couple of verbal warnings. And then finally at the end of the shift, I said, you're gone, you're fired. I had no idea, I had no right to do that. And it turned into a lawsuit that lasted for 2 years. He won. And what I should have done was start this whole process of a dossier, and that can take weeks, months, sometimes years. And so I think that was one example. And I think the other is if any of you had your own business, it's not even, everyone's always, the first thing you think, oh, as an American and businessman in France, it must be the taxes, huh? The taxes? No, it's not the taxes. You know, you pay a lot of taxes, but boy, do you get so much back in return, you know? So for example, all my employees are covered by the national health care, right? So all I have to do is give them a supplemental insurance, which is 16 euros a month, which is about 20 bucks a month per employee. They're completely covered. I don't have that burden of the cost of healthcare on my business. So that is like a huge plus, right? And so it's not about the money or the taxes and all that. It's about the inflexibility of the system. And so if you have somebody, everyone has to be in contract no matter who they are. If you have someone on a 20-hour contract a week, like we have a lot of students, they cannot work more than 20% extra. So that means an extra 4 hours, 24 hours maximum. I didn't know that in the beginning too. I thought, oh, someone goes on vacation, 5 weeks paid vacation, another thing in France. I'll just let them work 35 hours, which is the 35-hour work week in France. No, I don't have the right to do that. And that makes no sense to me. It doesn't make sense to Julian. If somebody wants to work more for a couple weeks or 3 weeks, why can't they, you know? And so if you bump them up to 35, you have to keep them there. And if you don't have to work for them, you have to pay them that amount. So it gets really crazy. So it ends up, that's where it's a bit impractical, where the owners and that little puzzle, or sometimes you're understaffed. If you've been to a cafe in France sometimes, and you're like, why is there only one person and there's all these people? Probably one person's on vacation. and it's really hard to get a replacement and work that out. So I think those two examples, there's many other in there. The trial period is a chapter in there that it's just an example of discovering, oh, they changed the law. This is crazy. You know, I didn't, and even Julian, even my lawyer will be like, I don't know what they came up with just now, but you know, it changes so regularly. Macron has made a few changes that are helpful for us, but boy, the flexibility is still not there. So I think that's the main. Would you agree, Julian?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
The concept of flexibility does not exist in France yet. So here's your niche. If you want to, you know, start a business on a new concept, try flexibility.
So what,
does that make sense, everyone? Does that seem, is that clear with some of the challenges? I hope. Okay.
Yeah, first of all, you know, from this side of the pond, to hear that your employees have healthcare insurance is like just such a remarkable victory for, you know, just humanity. It's just unconscionable that we are, you know, the only first world country that doesn't have a single payer system for everybody. But I wondered, you know, obviously you're both involved in the venture, and I wondered if you want to talk about how you manage that as a couple and the division of responsibilities, if you feel comfortable with that.
Oh, yeah, sure we do.
It's a day full of challenges. Oh my gosh. Which is, you know, when I have people asking me, so me and my husband, we might actually create a business together. Do you think it's a good idea? I said, well, you only can take that decision. I would say no, but it's up to you. So you have to wait that.
No, yeah, it is. You do take work home with you, of course. So when I see him crossing the room empty-handed, what are you doing? That's number one rule. Wait, we're not at the restaurant. Sorry.
Oh my gosh, just give me a break.
But I think, yeah, we have very different styles, of course, and
that helps.
I'm a worrier. I'm a person who I take things very personally, and so when it gets to those areas of the business, he's much better. He can much better sit down and say, okay, this is what I observed. This is what's not working. Me, I just want people like me sometimes. I talk about that in the book, and so that can be a hindrance. So those things, we complement each other that way. However, I think certainly just like it's just normal when we're spending all these hours together. Like right now, it's just the two of us from 10 to 3 p.m. And so, yeah.
In just one room.
In just one room.
And there's only few customers, you know.
Yeah.
So.
And then we get home, and then we're confined because there's a curfew. So it's a.
So sometimes it's a challenge, but it's a transformative experience, I would say. And if you're willing to do so, then know that challenge would be there, right next door, all the time, and you have to go through. You have to have the energy to go through. You have to have the mindset to go through, because otherwise,
yeah,
you might not make it.
But I think we've both grown as
I think so, yes.
In my end, as an American, I always want to do everything right and follow the rules just the right way. And I get very, and when you're in a country where it's not so clear, right, that can just drive you nuts. And so I've learned to just let back a little bit. Okay, this is a little bit of a gray area. I'm okay with this, kind of.
Well, boy, do we have gray areas in France. We have a lot of them. So you have to know how to maneuver those gray areas, and that's fun. And you know how to do it.
Like, for example, when we in the second restaurant, we wanted to change the little sign, like the arm sign that comes out, like the old-fashioned things. And so when I first opened, I went through the whole process and did the whole paperwork, and it went on forever and ever and ever. And they would only allow us a light that was so dim you couldn't even see it, right? And then Julian came in 2012 to manage the restaurant. Next thing you know, they're changing it and putting a nice big bright like sign. And I said, and Julian said that the guy putting it up with put the other one up. He says, it wasn't so cute how Monsieur Carlson wanted to follow all the rules.
Well, I think you really hit on the aspect of what makes this work for you too. I mean, we can certainly relate here, but you have a different style and different skills. And I'm reminded of how Julian was indispensable in getting those dinner rolls hot from the bakery at your Thanksgiving Day, celebration at the diner. And he had just the right way of doing that. Craig, we will open up to some questions from our guests. I wondered if there was a segment of the book, just a short passage that you might like to read from, your choice, but I know Mama is with us here on the call, and the snail hunting together is very sweet. But your choice on that.
That's exactly what I think I want to read.
Oh, very, very good. And then maybe afterwards we can take some questions from our guests. You can put them in the chat. And I'm just going to have to do double duty here, so you'll excuse me. But please go ahead. We'd love to hear, some of the rhythm and the sound of the story, because it's so beautiful.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
So this is chapter 14, and it's called Operation Escargot. And so I'll start. Mothers-in-law get a bad rap. It doesn't help that we call them mothers-in-law, as if we're forced by a judge to accept them into the family. Compare this to the French version. Belle maman, beautiful mama. Honestly, which one would you rather have? I first met my belle maman long before she was officially my mother-in-law, just my boyfriend's mom. I've been going out with Julian for only a few months, when unable to resist my rugged American charm, he made his déclaration d'amour in a Sri Lankan restaurant near the Gare du Nord, professing his love over palak paneer. I can't wait for you to meet Elizabeth, Julian said as he smiled and held my hand. Ever since I'd known him, Julian always referred to his mom by her first name. Apparently, when he was just 9 years old, he decided one afternoon, and for no particular reason, that he would no longer refer to his mom as his mère, but his père, or peer in French. It was odd to hear, and a little unsettling. My dad, Fast Eddie, used to call his mom by her first name too, and in the same deep voice as Julian. It's a bit disturbing when your boyfriend sounds exactly like your old man. Back in the Sri Lankan restaurant, I smiled at Julian. I can't wait to meet your mom. I mean, Elizabeth too, I said, suddenly feeling a little anxious. Have you come out to her yet? Oh yeah, years ago with my first boyfriend. In fact, she's Facebook friends with all my exes. All his exes? Geez, how many did he have? I barely had the good fortune of having one. In any case, I was relieved to hear that Elizabeth was so open-minded. When it came to my own family, I dreaded the day when I would have to tell them about Julian. That is, if we actually ended up staying together long enough. Back then, I was so fatalistic, I was convinced that it was just a matter of time before Julian wised up and dumped me. If that does happen, I tried to comfort myself. At least his mom and I can still be Facebook friends. So, is that good?
Perfecto. Wonderful.
So let me just say one last word. So Elizabeth came up from, well, she's living in the south of France now, Antibes, but she grew up in Dijon. And so the mustard capital, which is Burgundy, the heart of the Burgundy wine country. And so we spent Christmas there with his side of the family. and she came up to Paris, which is always a treat. She'll be here 5-6 days, and boy, does she spoil me rotten with her cuisine. And so I'm so excited she's here, because not only because of the cuisine, of course, but boy, I'm gonna be spoiled. What I guess she got shy.
Well, first of all, it's wonderful that you can all be together, so that's a blessing. So good for that. We'll open it up for folks if they have questions. If you just want to raise your hand and we can call on you.
Yes.
And while folks are deciding what to ask, I have a question. I wonder, Craig, if you ever thought about how your experience would be different if you were to have opened a diner, let's say in Connecticut.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. That's a good question. I don't know if I ever would have, to tell you the truth. Seriously, simply because that's not where I ever imagined my life going. And so the trajectory that it took was, I guess it's safe to say that in some ways I was running away from Connecticut when I went to France. And when I knew I wanted to live there, America sort of came back, and I found this balance, which I needed, which was France would be perfect if I had just this. Everything was there except this. And so I think it's better to say maybe if my life was more stayed in film or in television and that kind of thing. And I wonder if I would have as rich a life personally. I don't know, just it's me personally. I think what I had to get out of my system was this idea that we're constantly having to work, and this guilt of taking vacations, and just letting loose. And that was one of the biggest learning curves. When I first came over here, worked on that TV show, and people were taking 2 and 5 weeks off, I was like, oh, that's great, but that's kind of, can you do that? I mean, it just seems not responsible or something. And so now all my staff gets it, I get it, and I just can't imagine life any other way. I mean, it just seems so important to have that time to open up your world and spend time with family, which friends do often. So it's often family oriented as well. So
yeah.
I don't think I ever would have opened one, but I do think my life would be very different if I stayed in California. And I probably had my lips and my things. So
well, now you don't need to, because the level of stress is so much different. And also, it's wonderful for you to just bring into the room how, work, we do work ourselves to death in America, to our detriment often. So with that said, I do notice that Baron Zoka has a question in the chat. So Baron, why don't you unmute yourself and ask, please?
Well, I think Roberta was next on the queue. Someone else had raised their hand, but
on top right?
Roberta, yeah.
Okay, Roberta, if you want to go. I don't see a raised hand, but that's fine.
I will unmute. This is a question for Julian. I was wondering if there was any food on the menu or American food that you don't understand or you find revolting, or something that you just really, isn't appetizing.
Well, that's a good question. The very first time we met, I asked him, what do you do? And he said, I have a breakfast restaurant. I was, what? A breakfast restaurant? I mean, do you have customers going there for breakfast? Because we, the French, don't eat breakfast that much, right? So first this, and then when I look at the things on the menu, I think the first time I see nachos, it was hard for me to understand that, okay, so you have to melt that kind of cheese on top of tortilla chips. Interesting. And how good is that? I was wondering. Well, of course, now I understand that's good. They have so many things with, nachos, tortilla chips. I'm thinking of chilaquiles, for example. That's a good version of, nachos for breakfast. But there's few things actually I would, it's still difficult for me. Well, first, marshmallows. Marshmallows, it's difficult for me. I mean, is this food or is it just plastic in the shape of food? I don't know. I need to get the answer first. And then when you burn it, how can it get better when you burn it? I mean, this is not plastic burn. I don't know. I don't know what it is, man. So one year for Thanksgiving, someone made a casserole of sweet potato with marshmallows on top. Said, how? Why do you want to ruin the sweet potatoes with marshmallows? I don't understand.
I was horrified.
So that's one of the things, yes.
And other ones, customers will say, "What is this root beer? I want to try it." And I'm like, "No, you don't." You know, because it tastes like cough syrup to them. And I'll bring over a little taste for them and say, "Let's see." And they're like, "Oh, cough syrup."
That's great.
Great question. Great answer. I'll never look at a marshmallow the same again, although I very rarely look at one. So I'm kind of in your on your side of the court as far as that's concerned, Julian. All right, Baron.
So I'm curious to hear how your clientele breaks down among Parisians, other French, American expats living in France, American tourists, and other tourists, and how you think those different groups process the experience differently.
Yeah, in the very beginning when we first opened, like Julian said, breakfast, forget it. There was no French people. They come in because it was an old cafe, and so we get some of the old regulars that have been going there for 35 years to have their beer or their ballon, the red wine at 9 in the morning. So in the beginning it was a lot of expats or just tourists that discovered us. But 3 months in, we got it written up in Time Out magazine. And suddenly that word got out, and so finally it was like much more tourists. So it took a little time. And French would come in for when we added burgers to the menu, which was about 3 or 4 months in, because it was just breakfast in the beginning. And because they kept on saying, "When are we gonna have a real burger? We want real burgers." So they were responsible for me adding burgers. Now it's flipped. It's 70% French. It was about 70% Americans, expats in the beginning, tourists. Now it's like 70% French. Expats as well. It's just because we've had a lot more customers too. So I'd say it's the same amount of Americans, and but definitely the curve in our customers. For example, just an idea, the concept of a diner. When I told French people I was going to do a diner, that means dîner. So breakfast in America, dîner. What is it? Dinner or breakfast? What is it? We're confused. And I said, well, you've seen this in movies. You've seen Pulp Fiction. You've seen Happy Days. You know what a diner is. It's just no, it's called the diner. And so I insisted on keeping it. And then a few months in, the Parisien, which is a daily French newspaper in Paris, did an article on us and put in phonetics how to pronounce the word diner based on dîner. And cut to 10 years later, and one of our suppliers had got a brand new truck, and on the side said the #1 supplier of diners in Paris, and it had the word dîner. And I said, okay, we've had a little bit of a influence here. Some would say, maybe not for the best, but I think it was fine. I think it was for the best. And the processing, I think it's funny how different cultures have taken to us. And more recently, the biggest wave now has been from China, right? And from Asia. And we've been written up there quite a bit. And so we have a whole new wave of tourists when they've been coming.
It's because of pancakes. Pancakes are a hot thing in Japan and China now. So they're all coming to that.
Why do you think that is?
From what I saw in Japan, they have their Japanese style pancake, and that's very fluffy, very high. I mean, it's just like a stack of pancake, but it's a plain pancake, just one pancake. So for people that live in France, Japanese people, it's a treat to go to a place where you can have pancakes. So
yeah. So
interesting. So listen, I just want a quick question. I recall before that you did in the diner a little bit of a vote for when Obama was running for the presidency. Just curious if you ran something similar in advance of this November.
Yes, that's really interesting because that first year, Obama mania swept through France. It was unbelievable. Every French person, young French person, were getting the T-shirts and just it was crazy. And so we thought, wouldn't it be fun to have sort of this vote by your palate? And so we had the Obama burger, which was this big elaborate burger with some Chicago influence in it. And then we had the Romney omelet, which was a plain omelet with nothing inside. So it was a little biased because I do like Romney, he's a nice guy, but it was a little biased. So Obama swept that year. And then when it was time for, when we did Hillary and Trump, everyone thought Hillary was going to win. So, her votes were the most. And there was something after the win, which kind of took the fun out of it. And so this year we thought of doing it, but it was just like, it was hard for us to have fun. So we didn't do it this year. And maybe we felt we would have jinxed ourselves or something. But I think that was some of the thing that's been hard for these 4 years, that there hasn't been that levity. There hasn't been that we can make fun of each other and make fun of ourselves. And that seems to be missing. Do you agree? Everything's taken so seriously.
Yeah.
And so even as I was coming up with concepts, you know, like of what we could have, you know, the impeachment pie, you know, Trump's impeachment pie or something fun. I was like, now people get angry and they'll send me hate mail, you know, whatever. And so we just decided to skip it, but you know, but it was really fun that one year with Obama. Everyone was into it. It was, you know, it got a lot of press. You know, all the French TV stations were there, and it was really fun.
You can have so much fun with food and politics.
Well, hopefully that will return. And it is interesting to hear, you know, that potentially the same divisiveness that is on steroids here in the States is also on the streets of Paris. I see that Mary Rose has a question in the chat. So if you want to unmute yourself and ask, that would be great.
Right. My name is Mary Rose, and my question is follow on about the market question. Since there's a stable foreign student population in Paris, I'm just wondering how much they constitute of your market, because in my own experience, I had to actually sell my meal tickets at the Sorbonne because I couldn't keep up with the pace at which the courses were served at dinner. And I know that there's all kinds of students from everywhere who would probably love to come to, love it. They would just love it. So are they part of your current market?
Absolutely. Can you tell us, the other day, we, there's still some students that have stayed here, some, even though, you know, classes have been, you know, changed quite a bit, but it's a huge part of our not only as customers, but as staff as well. I mean, because all our staff have to speak French, of course, but they also have to speak English well, because that's part of the charm. And more and more French people want to learn English, and so they love coming in and practicing their English with the servers and getting a little bit of that attitude and all that. But even during this confinement, the other day I walked by a quarter of not 10, we opened at 10, and there were already 2 students waiting, 2 American students. Another time was an American and a French student, because the American was introducing the French person to the breakfast. And so that kind of thing happens quite a lot. Do you have any stories, Julian?
Yeah, the other day I had an American student actually coming to order a breakfast burrito. And he really actually take his time to express himself in French. And I thought, oh, this is so nice, you know? And I had the time actually to help him. Yes, you want your burrito? No problem. That's how you're going to say it and all that. That was so cute.
Yeah, he was a French teacher for many years, so that's true. I didn't think about that side of it, you know.
Oh, that's great.
So
I know.
was their French.
Yeah.
So.
Thanks.
No, that's great. And I see also the Baron mentions in the chat that he has friends in Paris, a couple where one in the couple is the head of the Democrats abroad in Paris, and the other is the head of the Republicans abroad in Paris. So.
Oh, interesting. There you go. Yeah, we've had both at our place, and we've registered voters at our place in past elections to, you know, vote absentee. And yeah. And it sounds like all of you know Paris very well. So I'll just tell you, one of our restaurants is in the Latin Quarter on Rue des Écoles, right before the Sorbonne, between the Sorbonne and the Jussieu. I mean, it's really, you know, 3 blocks around the corner from Notre Dame. And the other one is right in the heart of Marais. Saint Paul, the Metro Saint Paul, Rue de Rivoli, and all this. If you know, the Picasso Museum is not far from there. It's so we have very good locations. So we're very lucky. And both books talk about how we were able to score those locations, which was quite a bit of luck, you know.
Yeah, it was.
And so, because it's not easy. And in this one of these rare examples, in fact, that was American actually helped me get these locations. So that's been kind of interesting.
Yeah, because everybody was under your charm. That's it.
I don't know about that.
Oh, he's American. He wants to live with us. Charming.
Let's give him a chance. Then we'll devour him like an innocent lamb.
No, but it is charming, you know, because he's trying his best to understand how we live here and what do we do and how we speak and all that. So we want to help, you know, the guy. So
yeah, there's a chapter in the book where I talk about language and how tough it was to learn French, and how I forgot, you know, it's been so many years, and people will say, oh, you must have a gift for language. And I'm like, do I? No, actually, it's so much work. And in there was I forgot what I was going to say because you just said, oh, right. I said, look at it this way, because Americans hate when they're corrected all the time. They're like, oh, they're always correcting me and I can't speak. And I said, look at it as having a free French teacher, because the French love to correct you. So just go with it. And so that's
everywhere you go, you have a teacher where you go.
And so there was a moment where I switched my brain and was, hey, this is good. Actually, they're correcting me. So I'm not going to take it personally. So. But,
Epiphanies are great, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Good for you. Good for you. Well, listen, I'm not sure if anyone has any more questions. Well, the last people who may are thinking about it, I dropped into the chat how you can support this wonderful book. I have to just put out there that throughout the pandemic, authors, you have to realize, slave weeks, months, years to write a book. And that launch date, when they are set to go in front of a large crowd and share the book, it's published, it's behind two boards, is so important. And throughout this entire year, so many authors have been really robbed of that opportunity. And not only is that an emotional high and a boost to them as creative people, it's also important for them in terms of their career, in terms of the ability to sell books. So we really want you to support Craig and Julian today by getting the book. You can call us, you can email us. I've dropped in the chat the bookshop.org link that you can support us by getting the book there. And hey, it's still the holiday season, so there may be another special person on your list that you have to get a second book in order to give to them. We will have book plates at the shop, so we'll be able to put those in books that you get from us. But really, I just want to put out there for everybody that it's a real struggle, in the arts, in the literary arts, for people who've come out with a book this year, to not be able to have the kind of tour and the kind of push or lift that their book generally gets. So keep that in mind, support them. And if you've enjoyed the event today, support Canio's. We have a not-for-profit, Canio's Cultural Cafe, an educational not-for-profit. And I've dropped a link into the chat where you can, share your love with us today. So with that said,
I want to just say that too, if I may, just to add on to that, because I think one of the huge rewarding parts of my first book was touring across the country. And my appreciation, my respect was already so high, but of independent bookstores like yours and what they add to the community. And you could feel a real difference from town to town. The ones that had this bookstore, it was something that was just more rich, alive, just love it. And so I've been, this whole time, we haven't been able to travel, but that through this technology, I've been trying so hard to get people to support our local bookstores, independent bookstores, because they're just so important to me. And about you,
cultural centers.
Well, thank you.
Without the pancakes.
We can't wait for you to be here and to be in Canio's, and we also really can't wait to be there and in Breakfast in America. So listen, thanks everybody for joining us. Marianne, you have a last comment?
I want to say how well written this book is, and we may sort of take that for granted, but I know what great amount of work goes into crafting this story with such heart and soul and humor and delight. So I really recommend it. And I just noticed I sort of dressed to match the book. If you can.
Definitely red.
Yeah,
blue.
you did.
See, I've got the red and the blue going. Earrings in honor of the American and French flags. So we're so grateful to you, Julian and Carl, to join us across the ocean with technology. And for all our guests who joined us for lunch with Le Pancake Kid.
Yeah.
Merci. Thank
If you have
you.
any questions that you get a chance to ask, just contact me through Facebook. You can find it very easily, my name on there. And I'll be happy to answer any questions. And let me know if you come to Paris. Let us both know, because we love meeting you here and inviting you into our diner home. So.
Oh, that's great.
We look forward to that.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Everyone, listen, happy
let's
New Year.
And we'll.
See?
Yeah.
We can
Félicitations.
offer our
Belle maman.
farewells. Belle maman.
Yes.
You, belle maman.
Bonne année.
Bonne année.
Merci. Bonne
I'm in-
année.
I'm inspired to have pancakes on New Year's Day to bring in 2021 and have it be a good year.
Oh, absolutely.
Everybody stay safe to better days ahead. Keep writing, Craig.
Thank you. I really appreciate
Okay. All right, we miss you.
Salut. Salut. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Ciao, ciao. We love you. Thank you.
that. Same here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Keep the faith, everybody. That was terrific.
Thank you. And yeah, I can't wait to post it when